The interest payment is $300 billion. It's less than we bring in 1 month. So the annual payment on interest is less than what we bring in tax revenue in 1 month. Why can't we pay the interest? Why would we ever not pay the interest on our debt? Why? Because we're overdrawn and because all the rest of the spending is crowded out by the interest. We've got plenty of money to pay for the interest. We just don't have enough left to pay for the cocaine studies with Japanese quail. That's about $1 million. You say, that's only $1 million. Well, they studied Japanese quail to see whether or not Japanese quail on cocaine, to see if they're more sexually promiscuous. How did we get to a $30 trillion debt? Because there's studies like that littered throughout the budget. In fact, the group that does these studies, the National Science Foundation, we just increased their budget by 2/3. Mostly Democrats, but once again, many of the big government Republicans voted for this too. So we've exploded the National Science Foundation. Now, was there any warning that the National Science Foundation was one of the most wasteful parts of our government? Well, yeah, since 1972, there was a senator at the time named William Proxmire. He was a conservative or maverick Democrat from the Midwest, and he started an award. He called it the Golden Fleece Award. And the first award he gave was for a study from the National Science Foundation. It was over a study that was $50,000. That was when $50,000 was a lot of money. And the study was to see what makes people happy. Really? And people were aghast that we were spending $50,000 on it. And he complained. He gave them a booby prize, an award, the Golden Fleece Award. And lo and behold, we're still doing it. This same organization last year did a $1.5 million study that if you take a selfie of yourself while smiling and then look at the selfie later on, does it make you happy? That cost $1.5 million. Why do people like each other? Why do people fall in love? These aren't studies for taxpayer dollars, but these are small ticket items. They say, you can never balance the budget on that. Well, what about $70 million spent on a hotel in Kabul that the contractor ran off with the money and it was never built? What about a $48 million gas station? No, strike that, natural gas station in a remote area of Afghanistan. Well, very few, if anybody in the United States has a car that runs on natural gas. Why was the U.S. government building a natural gas station in Afghanistan? Because we've gone woke on the green climate. We are for the green climate. We got to combat climate change and reduce the carbon footprint of Afghanistan. Really? I thought the military was supposed to kill the enemies, defend the country. But we're reducing the carbon footprint in Afghanistan. Somebody put up, I think it was Rod Dreyer put up this the other day. It was a little video clip, and it was it's tragic, but somewhat hilarious in its tragicness. He said, this is when we lost the Afghan war. And it had a picture of a urinal. I think it was Marcel Duchamp was some Dadaist artist back in like 1917, and I guess he thought it would be really hilarious to put a male urinal in a museum and call it art. And I don't know if it was really art or if it was a joke, but the thing is we're having these Afghan men and women in robes and veils and everything studying Dadaist art, a male urinal, and asking them what they thought of this. And you could see a couple of women just going and just sort of shaking their head with utter incomprehension. But when we're spending money sending PhDs over to Afghanistan to teach Dadaist art about that a male urinal is somehow art, I think that's why some of them think that we're actually the culture that's in decay, not them. But the thing is we are spending money right and left. The right spends it on military adventure, the left spends it on welfare, and the compromise that always happens around here is right comes together with left, and they all agree to, well, we might as well just spend it on both. So everything goes up. The military budget went up. We already spend more than all of the countries, more than 10 countries combined is our military budget. $750 some odd billion. Republicans and Democrats just raised it $25 billion more. In the midst of ending a war, where's the peace dividend? What happened? We ended a war. I thought we'd have a little more money left over. So today I tried to take $6 billion that's supposed to go to the Afghan Reconstruction Fund, to the old Afghan government. There is no Afghan government. They've been overrun by the Taliban. I would love for Americans that are watching this, call me today at my office and tell me why the Taliban should get money. But I ask that we take that money away, put it back in the Treasury, spend some of it on the Iron Dome for Israel, and it was objected to by the Democrats because, by golly, they'll spend money, but they don't want to offset it with any spending cuts. Well, really? We should have $0 being sent to any government in Afghanistan. I asked Secretary Blinken about this, and his response was, Well, I can't guarantee it, and if they are meeting expectations and they're acting and behaving properly, they might get this money. Really, I don't see a scenario or a world under which U.S. taxpayer dollars would be going to the Taliban. It makes utterly no sense at all. But we have spending that is literally out of control. The only time I've ever heard a Democrat, most of the time they're honest, they don't care about the debt, but the only time I've ever heard them say anything about the debt is, well, it happens because you cut taxes. Well, it's verifiably false. You can go back to the Reagan tax cuts when the rates went from 70 to 50 and then from 50 to 28. You know what happened? The government got more revenue. Because when you tax people less, when you let them keep more of their own money, guess what? Their incentives to produce go up, and the economy grows by leaps and bounds. So when Reagan cut taxes dramatically, the economy responded and grew tremendously. When we cut taxes in 2017, same thing. Revenue didn't go down, revenue went up. So how did the deficit get worse? Why did the deficit get worse? Was it because we cut taxes in 2017? No, it was because we piled on the money. We just are spending money like there's no tomorrow. So before we get to the extraordinary times we live in now, where everything's about COVID and we're just going to spend money like there is no tomorrow, before we got to that, we were borrowing $1 trillion a year. So the main segments of government, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, food stamps, other welfare, and military, that probably comprises 3/4 or more of government. If you look at that on an annual basis, before you get to the extraordinary binge of the last 2 years, we were already $1 trillion short every year, $1 trillion short. So last year we added a couple trillion more, and our deficit for the year, for 1 year, was $3 trillion. We've never, ever borrowed that much. There are going to be ramifications. You're already seeing some of the ramifications. You're seeing the prices in the grocery store go up. You're seeing the prices in the pump go up. You're seeing sometimes wages go up, but you're also seeing prices rising faster than wages, which often happens in an inflationary cycle. Some people have trouble comprehending how these numbers, what's a billion, what's a trillion. Reagan had an analogy he did, and he said that if you want to know how big a billion is, take $1,000 bills and put them in your hand. When you have them about 4 inches high, you've got $1 million. But if you want to know how much or how tall a stack of $1,000 would be if you had $1 trillion, it'd be 60 miles high, over 60 miles high. That's what kind of money we're talking about. That was to get to $1 trillion. So we have $1 trillion institutional debt that's added every year. But now we're talking about a time where they're talking about adding in one bill, $3.5 trillion. The bill that they have before us has $1 billion in spending for every page. Every page of the bill has an extra $1 billion in spending. It's extraordinary. We've never, ever seen anything like this. What happens when a country destroys its currency? We have examples in history. In Germany in 1923, the money was starting to lose its value in about September. And a loaf of bread might have cost 100 marks, where before it cost 1 mark. 2 weeks later, it was 1,000 marks. But then 2 weeks later, it was 10,000 marks. And then it was 1 million, and then it was several million. This happened in a 2-month period of time. People say, oh, when it comes, when the currency unravels, it'll be gradual. In Germany, it happened in a 2-month period. In Venezuela, the currency is completely worthless. Same as Germany. It's almost better to burn your currency for fuel or warmth than it is to spend it. This is what happens when you have runaway spending and out-of-control deficits. Venezuela is one of the richest countries in South America. They have more oil underground than Saudi Arabia. But frankly, socialism doesn't work. Socialism is this borrow and spend. It is this alarming tendency to want to offer everybody everything and say it's going to be free. Many of these things backfire. For the last year, we've been saying, well, oh gosh, we feel sorry for workers, so we're going to pay them while they're unemployed. But guess what? If you pay them more than the market wage, more of them will choose unemployment, and more of them will choose unemployment, and more of them will stay unemployed for a longer period of time. We found this out in the 2008 recession. During the 2008 recession, we extended unemployment. It's normally 26 weeks. It's paid for by a tax, and it largely works within the confines of a state-run program. We extended it to 99 weeks, almost 2 years. But you know what the studies found? And this is part of the syndrome we have around here. It's sort of the big heart, small brain syndrome. I think many of these people want to help people. They just don't understand, but what they're doing is actually hurting the same people they're trying to help. So if you extend unemployment to 99 weeks, and then all of a sudden the guy at 99 weeks or a woman says, I need to get a job, and they go to the employer and they say, I've been out of work for 99 weeks, I've been on unemployment. and the other person applying for the job says, well, I've been out of work 10 weeks and I'm looking for a job, who do you think the employer hires? Every time. It's a person out of work 10 weeks. The person out of 99 weeks, they're like, might be something wrong here. We might have gotten to the point where we've lost work ethic. So what have you done to that person that you tried to help? You've actually kept them out of the workplace so long that they become unemployable. After they become unemployable, what do they become? The permanently unemployable, the non-working part. You wonder who this is? 62% of the country is in the working force, 38% is not. These are people permanently out of the workforce. These aren't people who can't work. These are just people, for one reason or another, are no longer in the workforce. Now, some of them can be people who can't work, and we have sympathy for that. But many of them are people who just stayed out of work too long, or took the wrong incentives, or became addicted to drugs or alcohol because they weren't working. So there are things we can do in our country, but if we're not careful, it's going to slip away from us. I don't want our country to be Venezuela. I don't want our country to destroy its currency. But what we're offering is a more difficult sell, because the other side is going to give you free college and free daycare and free cars and free cell phones. What we are offering is opportunity. What we're offering is the freedom to try to strive. We're offering equality before the law, not equality of outcome after you've done your work, after you've tried to participate.